Hello.
Hello. How's everyone?
Good.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. It was so quiet. I thought like my earphones doesn't work. Yeah. So let me put the agenda to the chat. Okay. So
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Tracy. So while we wait more people to join, as usual, if you can type in your name on the agenda. This week we have relatively light agenda as well. Mainly about what's next kind of discussion, followed by presentation from Andrew on Lighthouse. We can start slowly by looking at the only action item from last week. So this action item is still open. Yeah, we asked Jackie to update the invitation. So we have the link to HackMD rather than the Google Docs, therefore the agenda, but the issue is still open. I don't know how many times one could, ping, but yeah, we'll wait until that is done. And that was the only action item. And I am wondering if we can update Google Calendar invitations. I don't know if I have permission or not. If I had, I could have updated, but I don't know. Let me share my screen first. So you can see the agenda now, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So that was the only action item. And the next agenda item is about publicizing the work we are doing. Now I added this topic based on the discussion we had like 2 weeks ago or the earlier meeting. As you know, we pushed or stored the roadmap in our repo. It's kind of, we released the first early version of our roadmap, and I think there are quite interesting things there, like the vocabulary work we have been doing, followed by this work stream setup we agreed to establish. And the first work stream we had there was events in CI/CD, which is running. And in addition to that, there are some other items like from CI to CD, what are the integration points or what are the challenges and so on. And one of the ideas was to write an article to publicize the roadmap and call people for an action. But while I was thinking and seeing some other communities, what they are doing, I started thinking about if we should instead perhaps start working on some kind of white paper to at least list the work we have been doing. Again, the vocabulary work or the knowledge sharing with these presentations we are having from different communities, followed by the work stream setup, because we identified some focus areas and trends like events and reusable libraries, and perhaps some use cases from user communities and some updates from projects relevant to interoperability area, followed by call for an action. So I'm wondering what people think if we start working on some kind of white paper or whatever the name it is, and we publish it with the help from CDF.
Hey, Fatih. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it matters how we like frame it or scope it, because I know sometimes I'll talk to folks about interoperability, and they'll be like, is it interoperability for the sake of interoperability, or can we talk about it as a benefit for an end user, like someone who's trying to stitch together a system? So maybe tackling it from a specific point of view of benefits to the wider ecosystem or to project adopters would make sense.
Yeah, I seen the article published yesterday on DevOps.com. Tracy, you were part of that article. And it's exactly like how you described what CDF is trying to, and if we think in SIG context, we can expand what you have been talking about during your podcasts or within those articles, and perhaps look in interoperability in CI/CD area and how it could help users and what the projects are doing to address those things. So not just like, okay, here is the SIG, we are doing this, but rather than have it broader and actually highlighting the benefits of this, potential benefits of this work we are doing. And it doesn't have to be limited to just this SIG or CDF, but cross-community type of, you know, highlighting the work going wherever.
Yeah, I agree. And like even in that article and other places, I'll talk about the work on the Rosetta Stone and the common terminology. And that always gets a lot of interest. But I guess in many ways, it's kind of a GitHub page hidden in a repository, and not something like perhaps if it was in a better format, like a white paper and more prominent, that would lend itself better to being shared and help others step in and contribute and drive the conversation forward.
Yep.
Any thoughts from anyone else on the call?
I think making it more public is a great idea.
Okay. So then again, since I think it is important to get, you know, end users talk about the challenges they are facing. I'm wondering if we have anybody who could contribute from their organizations with regards to what they are doing to address those things within their organizations based on the projects or tools they are using, and kind of highlight the fact that, yeah, we all have some internal fixes to get those tools work in a way that solves our issues. So if we can find one or two organizations, end user organizations, to, you know, talk about their use case and challenges. In addition to that, if you can, like Tecton or Jenkins X or one or two communities talking about what they are doing in their communities to address or potentially address those challenges, that would make it even more attractive. So we don't simply talk about some dreams, but actually talk about some real problems. In addition to the problems, some possible solutions worked by the communities. So I don't want to put anyone under the spot, but like, do we have anyone who wants to take part in this type of use case or end user story or project story?
I can help from a Jenkins X point of view. I'm sure Roby and a couple more people that are on the call as well that are involved in Jenkins X. Yeah, sign me up.
I'd be happy to contribute from an end user perspective.
Great, really happy to help on the Jenkins X side and in general on the paper.
Okay. And Dave can help from the point of view. Anyone else?
Well, I don't know if you saw, Fatih, but I've put in my name for a presentation in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen the notification and I was like, "Ooh, finally!" So
Yes, finally, my God, you know, that guy got off his ass. Sorry, pardon my French. I do speak French. No, I actually don't. Yeah, so I've got I'm going to give you guys a presentation of how we are incorporating Tecton CD within the eBay tooling, the CD tooling. And it'll open up the way for us to, you know, go into full cloud native development, and also open up options for our developers to development groups who want to use Jenkins X to basically use the Tecton CD framework we're putting in underneath the covers, so they have that as an option as well, since Jenkins X is also building on top of Tecton for its orchestration framework, which once again, Tracy and James, awesome. The right thing to do. So yeah, I'll give you guys kind of an overview. I'm putting it through eBay legal right now, that we have some legal requirements, and whenever we expose any sort of internal documents to the outside world. So
okay, so that would be great. Like maybe we could talk about this later on, but would you be interested to again take part in this white paper, or whatever we will call it, as an end user, since you will already present this within 2 weeks or within 4 weeks? Maybe it might be easier for you to turn that into like 2-3 paragraphs of text as well.
Yeah, I kind of missed the beginning part of this. What is this white paper about?
Yeah, it's simply like publicizing the work we are doing. You know, we have been talking about things last 6 months since January, and we have been sharing knowledge between projects, or as users, we are talking about our challenges, and then we publish this vocabulary followed by the roadmap. It's simply documenting the work we are doing a bit more in a bit more marketing friendly format. You know, everything is in GitHub, but it's not always easy for like non-developers especially to find that information. And if we could write some kind of white paper and get help from Continuous Delivery Foundation to publish that, we could get more interest from end users and projects or companies or whoever is having similar challenges or working on similar areas. It's basically call for an action. Look, guys, we are doing something here. We have some progress. If you join us, we could do things better, and you can contribute to this work from your organization.
Yes, sure. I'll contribute to it where I can. There's, like I said, there's efforts going on inside eBay that involves CDF projects. So I
am just typing some names here. These are not like, okay, you have it now, you have to fix it. It's just capturing who said they could help with it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and Fatty, you can put me down to just help tie it all together and sync with the rest of CDF to get any resources we need to work on it. I don't know, whatever, graphics or stuff like that.
I was gonna say, do we have a set of tooling to work collaboratively on a document like this?
Probably Google Docs.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a doc. Actually, I put some very high level structure. I can put the link there quickly. It's basically what I was talking about. Let me put the link there. Like, what are we discussing with CI/CD? Key considerations, constraints, concerns, trends, case studies, future conclusion. It's like some very random headings. So we could start on Google Docs, and once we have some, you know, structure in place and some something on the document, we can get help from CDF and get their feedback on if this is like a white paper, it's like something we worked in GitHub, like, because the wording should be, you know, different based on the audience. We will probably need to address more than just developer community, like decision makers or whoever. Yeah. So, But Tracy, thanks for that link to outline. Yeah, I will include this in the meeting minutes as well, or perhaps we can send a separate mail with an obvious subject saying that here is the link to white paper, please join, and then, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
the other
then,
thing,
yeah.
I hadn't seen the outline, but I think that's really good. And we have a couple of meetings next week where we have a regular CDF ambassador call. And that's a pretty active group. So just taking something like this and getting it in front of them and saying who wants to help, I think it's just a nice way to bring it up again and get folks to engage in a more tangible way. So I can take on that action.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Tracy. So, any other thoughts, comments on this? Because we did some work, and it is important we highlight the work we did. It's not the best thing that could have been done, perhaps, but given the progress we have, it is always good to, you know, talk about what we are doing to get even more people take part in this and in CDF in general.
I wonder if,
okay. Yeah.
I wonder if, as part of that, we could try and give some kind of areas that we're looking for more end user information in the, you know, thinking about interoperabilities. We want to know about problems. It doesn't necessarily for one project to go and solve, but as a group here, we could look at problems that we can kind of work together and finding solutions for which. So I was just wondering if if this goes out, is really to try and set some scope or something of what we're really kind of looking for from end user point of view. Does that make sense? Like use cases, common problems, I don't know, processes, I don't know, just trying to get people thinking about what some of the feedback, some of the information we're just trying to, which it would be useful for us to then go and take away and then work together as a wider group on looking at whether there's standardizations we can make, we can put together, we can work on, and various things.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and we have some things in the roadmap. Like I think Andreas and Emil and some others put some bullet points under standardized frameworks. So this could be like starting point. We can say here are the things we have been able to identify based on the current engagement. If you have more things to, you know, bring in the table to work with the rest and standardize or whatever, join us. And I think white paper, the point of white paper is call people for action. We could even put wrong things there to just get people say, oh, you are thinking it wrong. We actually think this way and we solved that problem already. Just let people speak, or, you know, kind of. But yeah, James, that's like, if we could list some use case or some problems, we allow or enable others to come and speak up, hopefully.
Sounds great.
Okay, so that was the first item in the agenda. And the second item is about the topic we have been discussing last few meetings, reusable libraries. And I think Kara, Tracy, you both talked about this item. Like one of them was like go-scm, the other one was like Tekton or Jenkins X Helm chart. I'm wondering, like, is there any progress there? Like, will we go and create a work stream for it, or we need more time? So I just want
to I think the go-scm will be interesting. I just saw I don't know if folks saw the Harness news where they've acquired drone, and looking for Ravi on the call, and he's not here because we were going to assign him, tell him to go get us the drone, folks. But on the other one, on the Tekton Helm chart, I think that is like just low-hanging fruit. It's on my list to do, and maybe what I'll suggest is I could set up a working session and just get a couple of folks together, anyone who wants to help, and we'll just kind of just work at it, bash it out in real time, and figure out what that means. So I will go schedule that maybe sometime next week and just invite whoever wants to, and again, toss it out to this group, the ambassadors, and just do a kind of BYOB. We're gonna sort a Tecton Helm chart in CDF. Oh, and I see Christie's on the line.
Is drone based on Tecton? I didn't know anything about it until yesterday when my harness rep was like, hey, did you see we bought these people?
No, drone and Tecton are not related, but there's a common library that Jenkins X has used from the drone project, go-scm, and Tecton also uses it or would like to use it, and we wanted to get it into a place where all the projects could leverage it, or at least get the changes Jenkins X has made pushed upstream.
Tecton is currently using it. We're using the Jenkins X fork of it.
Cool. And Christy, did you hear the plans to just stick a Tecton Helm chart in a CDF repository?
Oh, I didn't catch that, but that sounds good.
Okay, good. As long as it's got your blessing, that's good.
Okay, then you have it under control, Tracy. And we will
Yeah, I'll shoot out an email and just pick a date or time and see who wants to come join.
Okay. So before we move to Lighthouse presentation from Andrew, do we have any other topic anyone wants to bring up? Okay. So Andrew, you are with us.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I stop sharing and we
Alright.
try. Stop sharing. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for uploading the slides already. You are
No
the
problem.
fastest.
It was a good way to force me to say they're done. So here's a hopefully relatively quick introduction to Lighthouse. I'm Andrew Bayer. I'm an engineer at CloudBees. I've worked on Jenkins X. Lately, I've been working primarily on Lighthouse. And yeah, so what is Lighthouse? At its base, it's ChatOps for pull requests. It's the idea of centralizing your communication and reporting and approval mechanisms for pull requests on the pull requests. So it handles responding to webhooks to trigger on PRs or pushes to master, etc. It tracks the results and records those on the SCM provider, including links to logs if appropriate. It manages approvals via ChatOps commands and an owner's file, and automatically merges pull requests which meet pipeline and approval requirements. I felt like I needed to do a slide here. There's just what is ChatOps for pull requests, so I'm going to move on past that. Why does Lighthouse exist? So you may have heard of Prow. Prow is what Lighthouse is very much based on. Prow comes from and is heavily used by Kubernetes test infra. Makes it easier for them to organize, define, and run tests on PRs. The approval management started there in large part because they wanted to be able to give people the ability to say, yes, this should get merged, and have it get merged without giving them push rights to the repositories, because eventually you end up in problems when you give people push rights to repositories. It's a suite of components deployed as Kubernetes applications, and it's been adopted by a number of other OSS projects for their own test infra, including Tecton. So Prow and Jenkins X. Prow's workflow and triggering mechanisms and ChatOps mentality fit really well into Jenkins X, and was incorporated into Jenkins X initially in late 2018, if I'm remembering correctly, and then all in over the next few months after that. As well as it being used by Jenkins X, by the Jenkins X project itself. It's also part of the Jenkins X product. It's part of the distribution. So, well, at least it was until recently. So there were some limitations. Was that the right? Yeah, that was the right side. There are some limitations with Prow from Jenkins X's perspective. Prow only supports github.com. It's very tightly integrated with GitHub APIs. It's got some really impressive optimizations around caching and API rate limits because at the scale of pull requests that the Kubernetes test infra org has to manage, you really need to do a whole lot of caching and rate limit management or you're going to fall over. Jenkins X wanted to be able to support other SCM providers besides github.com, and that meant we had to figure out what to do. So the first question was, should we add support for these other providers to Prow? And we ended up coming to the conclusion that that was not the right direction to go. Prow exists first and foremost to serve the needs of Kubernetes test infra. Others are completely welcome to use it and to, propose changes, but the team that actually owns and maintains Prow is focused first and foremost on Kubernetes' own usage, the Kubernetes project's usage. So they're pretty conservative when it comes to changes. And I want to make it very clear, I think that's a good thing. I think that they should be. Prow inadvertently ended up being something that was useful for other projects, but it's when you've got its main reason is to make sure Kubernetes PRs get built and merged and that issues get managed, etc. And we came to believe that making the kind of changes we'd need would be fairly substantial because of how tightly integrated the GitHub stuff is in Prow. The architecture just, it would have probably been significantly more than the Prow team would have been comfortable bringing in, which again, completely understandable. So a little over a year, about a year ago, we started what we've been calling Lighthouse. It started as a fork of relevant Prow code. First, the webhooks handling and plugins for things like /approve, /LGTM, /meow, the most important one. And then added what's called in Prow Tide, what we call in Lighthouse Keeper, the service that handles determining whether a pull request is mergeable or not, and if so, actually merges it. We use go-scm, as previously mentioned, for the abstraction over the SCM provider interaction, so that we don't have to have completely separate implementations for each provider that we interact with. We can just abstract that away and deal with and let go-scm be where those implementations live. Lighthouse has full compatibility with the existing Prow configuration. So in most cases, it's literally drag and drop. And a few months ago, a couple months ago, 3 months ago, we switched Jenkins X to using Lighthouse by default rather than Prow. So it's been in production use on all modern Jenkins X clusters for a few months now. A little bit about go-scm. So as mentioned, it was originally a drone.io project, and there still is a drone go-scm project on GitHub. We needed to iterate on it probably too rapidly to be able to get those changes back in any reasonable time frame. So we ended up forking. That library is now used by Lighthouse, Tecton, and I believe some others. And as mentioned, we'd love to merge our changes back in and get to there being one go-scm library. A little bit about Lighthouse's current capabilities. Most of Prow's capabilities, pretty much everything in terms of the ChatOps. So LGTM, approve, test this, override, assign, approval management via owner's file in the project repository. merging of approved/successful pull requests, triggering of builds in response to pull requests and in response to pushes to master, post-merge. Not included currently from capabilities that Prow has. Batch merges, because I kind of want to rework that. I'm not a huge fan of the batching logic in Prow. And right now we don't support running pipelines in Jenkins or as Kubernetes pods, but those will be coming fairly soon. We also don't have a UI. Prow has a fairly simple UI called Deck. And at this point, we do not have something like that. But what else we have? Well, build engines that can actually go run the pipelines. Jenkins X is where it started. Jenkins X has its own, while Jenkins X lives on top of Tecton for its execution, it has its own interface for how we trigger pipelines there using a kind of meta pipeline that looks at Jenkins at the configuration for the specific repository and generates a pipeline dynamically. And then we monitor pipeline activity as CRD in Jenkins X to see what the results are. Recently, we added support for straight vanilla Tecton pipelines with an inline pipeline run spec configured for your jobs. And there is some level of extensibility for addition of further engines already, but I, as I'll mention again later, plan to work on that and make it more pluggable and easier to configure. With Prow, you have to actually define every potential engine's configuration in the one set of config structs, and that can get kind of unwieldy, so I want to make that more pluggable. SCM providers. So as I mentioned, Prow only supports github.com. It doesn't even support GitHub Enterprise. Lighthouse supports GitHub, GitHub Enterprise, GitLab hosted or GitLab.com, and Bitbucket Server, 7.x, and greater. The experiences aren't necessarily as great on all of them. On GitLab, you have to do commands a little differently in some cases because GitLab has quick actions which hijack /approve, for example, as a comment. And so we have to have some tweaks there. And Bitbucket Server doesn't have labels, which we made some interesting workarounds to deal with that, since Lighthouse is very heavily dependent on labels for keeping track of things like approval, whether something should be tested, etc. So it's not necessarily perfect, but we do have fully functional support for all of those providers. Then there's an external plugin architecture. Prow already had this concept where every webhook that comes in can be relayed to a separate pod to handle outside of Prow proper. Lighthouse is gone in a slightly different direction with that. Our external plugin approach sends the go-scm abstraction serialization of the webhook rather than the GitHub or Bitbucket server, etc. webhook, so that the external plugin doesn't have to worry about translating between the different formats. And we also relay build events like start, finish, stage completion to the external plugins as well as webhooks, so that external plugins could respond to build succeeding or send messages to Slack or something like that, depending on build results, which I think is, since it's information that we've got coming into Lighthouse, it makes sense to be able to relay that to our external plugins. Now for the part that I'm always afraid of, let's do a demo. So this demo is Lighthouse using Tecton pipelines on GitLab, because I wanted to show something that Prow can't do. So hold on one sec. Move over here, bar. I want to see better. There we go. All right, so we'll start by taking a look at the config for Lighthouse. It is literally the same as Prow, to the point where it actually still has Prow names in it, because we wanted to have that complete compatibility. I'll mention a bit later how I'd like to create an additional configuration layer that we can parse to from the Prow configuration, but that doesn't stick with us needing to have all of the exact layout and terminology that Prow does, because we're not Prow, we're a descendant of Prow. And so here I've configured to say, don't merge my demo repo that I'll be creating a PR in momentarily, unless it's past its PR build context. And I said, before, when a PR comes in to that repository, let's create a Tecton pipeline that we're calling it PR build. We're using a test pipeline that I've already defined in the cluster. It's just simple. It just uses the git clone task from the Tecton task catalog to fetch the pull request source, and then just runs a script. Looks for a script.sh in the repo and runs it, just so I can have a really simple example, and it defines the workspace that it'll reuse. We then have the definition of whether we use merge, rebase, etc. for merging the repository. Labels that in this case, we won't be able to automatically merge a PR to that repository if it doesn't have the approved label. And if it has any of these labels, we also will not be able to merge it even if it's approved. So that's the config.yaml. There's also plugins.yaml. The main thing there is showing the various plugins that we have enabled on our repository. And we also have the config updater, which takes these two YAML files and turns them into config maps enabled on the Lighthouse config repo. So let's go look at a pull request. So we've got an owner's file here in the repository showing who can approve changes, my bot and me. Not very interesting. And we've got a script.sh that will get run as part of the pull request. That can be literally anything in a Tecton pull request. I just use this because it's simple. And it has a sleep in there so we can actually see status. So let's go make a change. Let's make this fail. Yeah. Why are you not letting me hit enter? There we go. Typing is hard. So now this pull request we'll open this pull request. This is just standard GitLab pull request. It feels very cluttered to me compared to GitHub, but I guess that's just what I'm used to. So now that this is run, hopefully our kickoff, we can see that it's reporting a pipeline. Right now, it's reporting the PR build. So if we click on that, we go over to the Tecton dashboard that I have configured in the Lighthouse setup to link to. And we can see that right now it has not really started yet. The pod is starting. So let's get back from that. We also can see that now that Keeper, which monitors all the open pull requests on the configured repositories, has seen that the pull request exists and is reporting on it and saying, oh yeah, this isn't mergeable yet because it doesn't have /approved. Oh, and we can see that my pipeline failed. Who would have expected that it failed? Oh, there's a merge conflict. Well, that's even funnier. So yeah, we can see that information here. In GitHub, it's in the status, the commit status at the bottom of the pull request. But let's see what's wrong with my merge commit. What did I do wrong there? Oh, I added that there. Yeah. Let me close this sucker and make a new one. Sorry. This is how it goes. This is what I get for doing a live demo.
It's good to see when what the effect is of when something goes wrong. You wanted to get that merge failure.
Yeah.
There, right? Yeah. It's all good.
Let's see if this one won't fail for that. And we'll cut the sleep down to 30. Don't need to wait as long. Ah, that's why I was doing it in the IDE, because I couldn't figure out how to do new branch thing here. Okay. Yeah, all right. Try that. Yeah, do that again. It's waiting till it hears back from Lighthouse about the existence of a pipeline. That you can see it already responded by saying, hey, here's the size of the, oh, go away, GitLab. The size of the PR, a message saying that it's not approved and that someone from the approvers list needs to approve it before it will, get merged. And it failed again. Why did it do that? Well, I don't know. I probably screwed something up in something else. Oh, I'm running too old a version of Lighthouse to support that. So we'll ignore the fact that it's failed because that actually lets me show something else. But while it's going on, let's show my favorite plugin. So if we wait a moment, oh, and we can see, we can get, why do you keep doing that? The links to the logs also will show up for failed test contexts, will show up here, and you can retest them with /retest. And oh, look, a cat. Now let's /approve. That will not work right, actually, because we are on GitLab. And so we need to do /lh-approve. Either one will work on non-GitLab, but on GitLab, you have to do that prefix. I have a ticket open with GitLab to get them to send webhook events for those quick actions, at which point we can actually respond to them correctly. But so I'll do that. And then in a moment, it should update to say that the PR is approved, but it won't auto merge because the pipeline's failed. So there's something we could do about that in a case where we know that the pipeline failing doesn't actually matter. We can do /override this. I think it's this. Hold on. Let's find out. This will mark the PR build. That's right. It is override PR build. And yeah, so you can see that because I put the wrong input in, the bot, Lighthouse responded by saying, no, that's not what you meant to, what you needed to do. And so here we did override the context. We said, treat it as if it passed. So that now when we go here, it shows up as passed. And now shortly, Lighthouse will see this update and we'll end up merging the PR. We'll give it a, yeah, it's in the process of being merged. So all that happened without me ever hitting merge. I could have retested it if it was a failure that I actually could do something about, or there was, flakiness. I can add cat pictures to the PR. I can assign other users, etc. So that's my demo. Let me go back to presenting and drag that bar back out of the way again. All right. So future of Lighthouse. More functionality. So like I said, we recently added the Tecton pipeline support like a few weeks ago. And we want to add the remaining other ways that you can trigger builds in, that you can execute your builds in Prow with Kubernetes pods and Jenkins. With Jenkins, the goal is to initially just emulate Prow's behavior, which requires there to be an existing job already that is set up with the right parameters to be able to get past what ref it needs to clone, etc. But what I'd like to do, what I need to spend some more time investigating, is ways to integrate with Jenkins multi-branch pipelines, where jobs are automatically created for every PR and are run for every change in the PR. I'd like to integrate with that to count those as contexts that need to be passed in order for merging to happen, and to enable /test context name to be able to rerun failed tests from the pull request, rather than having to go to Jenkins and click rebuild. And I'd really like to see more engines get added. These are just the ones that come to my mind. Having worked on Jenkins X and Jenkins and on Tecton, those ones are all obvious to me, and Kubernetes pods are the base of what most people are using with Prow. So those ones are obvious, but perhaps Spinnaker could fit in, could take advantage of this. Perhaps there's other engines that could take advantage of this. And like I said, I'd like to work on making the support for adding engines more pluggable and flexible, rather than just kind of wedging them in like Prow has always done. So there's some re-architecting to do there. Reporting, UI, and metrics. Prow has a bunch of observability and metric stuff that we're not really doing anything with in Lighthouse, because I don't actually know much about that area, and I'd really like to get more in there. And something equivalent to the deck UI may actually make sense to add that could be useful to people. But I am not a UI person, so it's not an area that I can really talk about much. The installation and initial setup could be better. We have a Helm chart, but it is tuned for Jenkins X's use case, may not be the best for all scenarios. Those config maps that we looked at earlier, the config.yaml and plugins.yaml, Jenkins X generates those automatically based on other configuration within Jenkins X for about which repositories it's paying attention to, etc. So historically, Lighthouse has not had to have a base copy of those, which is not the most user-friendly, but for its original use cases, it wasn't a problem. So we do need to come up with an out-of-the-box default that people can edit, rather than requiring them to find something they have to copy-paste in to start with. I mentioned the configuration. I'd like to rework it. Retaining the compatibility with the Prow config has been key, I think, and needs to remain the case for a while, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a Lighthouse config that is more specific to Lighthouse's needs and integration with other tools that can be translated to from the Prow config. One thing that particularly is interesting is the idea of putting the pipeline run spec for a pipeline that's using Tecton, moving that from being inside the one central config.yaml to being in the project's repository, like a Jenkins file, like a Travis file, like a Jenkins X YAML, so that you can define your pipeline run in your repository without having to worry about, oh, well, I need to go make a change to the Lighthouse config repo to get that change into the config map, etc. So there's definitely some interesting areas there. The next thing to talk about in the future is a long-term home. So while Lighthouse very much started as a Jenkins X tool, part of the Jenkins X suite, it has grown beyond that. It still very much is part of the Jenkins X suite, but it doesn't need to be limited to just serving Jenkins X. It now has Tecton support. It will have Kubernetes pod and Jenkins support within the next month or so. And we could also add more SCM providers, though there's limitations with like Bitbucket Cloud that I could go into but won't bother. I feel like there are other tools and users that would like to be able to get the Prow behavior, get the pull request ChatOps without having to be on github.com and using a specific workflow that Prow requires. Lighthouse is a lower lower level piece of the puzzle than Jenkins X. It has value on its own and for integration with other tools and systems.
One thing I'd probably say on that is probably Jenkins X roadmap will also be extending to all these other things as well. So it'd be interesting when we look at those things and see what those capabilities are. Because the ChatOps being something very core, really that we want to be building up that experience with Jenkins X. But yeah, I agree. It'd be interesting to see what those other integrations might look like. But certainly Jenkins X's roadmap as well is going to be continue to expand as well and look for further integrations and different pluggable ways as well.
But yeah, so Lighthouse will need to build a community if it wants to succeed as a project on its own or otherwise decoupled from being a sub-project of Jenkins X. It's not ready to be a top-level project of CDF or anywhere else at this point. There's not enough of a developer community. For it to really thrive, it needs a community of contributors. And I am looking for a home in which to build interest, usage, and a developer community. Hi, Tecton. Questions?
Yeah, so if I may start, awesome demo, by the way.
Thank you.
Excellent. What I know you already mentioned, it's so you answered some of my questions by the last couple of slides, but what does it take to get this thing installed on a, on-prem, and what is its dependency on currently on Prow and Jenkins X? Do I bring in parts of Prow or Jenkins X when I install Lighthouse, or do I have to have them installed first? That kind of thing.
So it is completely separate from Prow. From the whole point of it from the beginning was that it was the replacement for Prow in Jenkins X. It until recently had Jenkins X code in its repo. Jenkins X related code, but I was able to decouple that into a separate controller and a separate repository. So you do not need to install anything Jenkins X or anything Prow for it to work. The demo I just showed you, I installed via installing Nginx, installing Tecton, using Helm to install Lighthouse with values.yaml I set up with an HMAC, an OAuth token for GitLab, and the URL for my dashboard. And I did have to add the config.yaml and plugins.yaml config maps by hand originally. That's, like I said, what I need to streamline, something I need to streamline. But other than that, it was not, there were no other dependencies. I needed Nginx for the ingress for the hook because GitLab needed to be able to call somewhere to deliver the webhooks. I'm hoping to get a quick and dirty install it on your own doc up in the next week.
That would be excellent. In fact, for your hook, for external hooks into triggering things, Tecton triggers is awesome.
Yeah, I need to spend more time looking into Tecton triggers. For some reason, despite the time I've spent in Tecton, that one and I were just ships passing in the night, and I'm not sure yet exactly how much of an overlap or how much space there is for integration between the two versus overlap of how they're handling things. That because Tecton triggers is aiming to trigger pipelines in response to events.
That's the really cool part about it, is that Tecton triggers, and I had an aha moment when I saw that it actually is able to trigger any sort of Kubernetes API. That to me was like, wow, we could be triggering all kinds of things, not just pipeline runs and other, any sort. If it's installed as a CRD, it can be triggered.
Yeah, Lighthouse does do a lot of things that don't result in a CRD. Is where I'm not sure what's going to end up making sense in terms of gluing the two together, because like the /approve or /meow, there's no CRD. It just got responding directly to a webhook, and having to create a CRD to have something else do the responding would be more heavyweight than necessary. So it doesn't make sense to completely replace Lighthouse's webhook handling with Tecton triggers, but it feels like there's probably something somewhere in between, like at a minimum, reworking the Tecton controller I wrote to, rather than creating a pipeline run, it may make sense for it to send a cloud event to Tecton triggers. I need to investigate this more. But it's very much something I intend to. I had a slide about mentioning Tecton triggers in here, but then I'm like, yeah, but really all I'm going to say is I'm not sure yet, but I know I need to look into it. And so I decided to delete the slide.
I think you'll find it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's great. I just am not sure how its flow fits with Lighthouse's flow yet. Just not sure yet.
Well, we at eBay may actually, if this is the case, and if once you have, this is an awesome tool for. We are trying to reduce the number of places where developers go away from our GitHub Enterprise pages, especially the PR page, to centralize around that, the conversation around that, and the workflows around the PR page. Is anything that helps us do that that's it. That is the thing that we need to use. So as soon as you have something together that allows someone like myself to just go and install the thing without having to bug you guys to no end, that would be the place. I would actually get someone on it, an internal team, to actually try it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'll get something up in the by a week from today at the absolute latest.
Not a problem.
And I can be reached in Kubernetes Slack, in the Jenkins X channels, or anywhere on Tecton Slack. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you again.
No problem.
So I have something. It's not a question, but few of you may remember we had some discussion around this CI robot work group or something a few meetings ago by Max Corby, and he actually refers to Lighthouse and ChatOps. So I just want to connect Andrew you with him, because he is looking for people to talk about these things, work with these things, and he even have a proposal for a work stream for the SIG. So I just
I would love to be involved with that.
Yeah, I put the link to the chat, and I will ping you on that issue as well, so you get in touch with him.
Great.
And perhaps work on these things together.
That would be wonderful. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. And here's some links to Lighthouse, Prow, and Jenkins X, because, Jenkins X, baby. And thank you all very much.
Thanks for joining and presenting, Andrew.
You're welcome.
So, okay. Anyone wants to add last minute topic or wants to bring something up? Okay.
Hi.
If not,
Patty, just quick couple of things. I managed to ping Jacqueline, so she's making the changes to the calendar right now. She had some access issue because she hadn't originally created it, but that should be sorted. And for the working session on a Tecton Helm chart, I stuck something in the calendar next week at this time. So anyone who wants to just join in, just let me know. I've invited a few folks, but everyone's welcome.
Thanks, Tracy, for getting the calendar fixed. So our next meeting will be on 20th of August, and if Ramin gets approval for his slides internally, we could perhaps have that presentation. If not, we continue with perhaps white paper discussion and some other topics if people want to have discussion on anything else. So thank you all for joining today, and talk to you in 2 weeks. Have a nice day.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.